Hello everybody. In this lecture I will be talking about analytical method. Irrespective of discipline, analytical method is something that every researcher use in his or her research. What is the meaning of analytical method? Being analytical means to think in terms of empirical data. It gives you a valid insight from the perspective. In the field of social research, the correct meaning of analytical is, I think, essentially a synthesis of researchers' thinking. Analytical method is deeply concerned with inductive interference. In research, two types of logical reasoning that we use. The first is deductive logic and the second is inductive logic. Deductive logic is when you understand something from general point of view to a specific point of view, and inductive interference is something that you understand something from a specific point of view to the general point of view. Here you can read my slide. What does inductive interference means? Inductive interference is defined as a method of reasoning whereby knowledge of some members of a class is applied or attributed to all as yet unknown members of the same class. In research, many of us always use one thing, that is analogy. I think whenever you use analogy, we use actually inductive interference. Now, why do we use analytical method? Analytical approach comes into picture whenever we determine or we have to determine the degree or the type or the direction of relationship existing between two or more phenomena under a given context. Experimental method provides us the most favorable condition to use inductive interference. Why I have used the experimental method to try to understand the analytical method? Because I think the inductive interference gives the very foundation of analytical design. Analytical design demonstrates the causal connection between variables. The most common design we use in research is called the before and after design. Why? Because it is conducted to be able to predict phenomena. Typically, an experiment is conducted to be able to explain some kind of causation. There is two principles on which analytical method works. The first is the role of variable and the second one is quantification. Sometimes we confused with controlled variable. Most of us think control variables means a static condition, but that is not correct. A control variable may be one whose attributes do not change, but it is also like something one whose attributes change but in a certainable amount. I am giving one example. If the increasing age of Ram is being related to his increase of height, here his age is certainly not static. In nutshell, I will say that control denotes a determinable quality or effect in analytical method, particular and general in social research. The second very principle is quantification. Quantification means to determine quantitative relationship between two or more variables. Generally, we use a statistical method for quantification in social research. But you have to understand that statistical correlation can only express the degree of relationship between two and more variables, but this cannot designate which variables is cause and which is effect. Here, the first problem that I have just discussed, the problem with variables, comes into the picture. The 5 things that I think a researcher must check or recheck while pursuing analytical method. The first is assumption, the second is instrument, the third is data, and the fourth is reference, and the fifth is interference. You know, the researcher needs to determine how or from what viewpoint he should view his data. Such a viewpoint constitute his frame of reference, that is the paradigm in analytical research.